them of all their riches, and then they have to deal with all the horrors inside them. I had a story like that earlier in my story. Why not do another one? People love to get into a stable, or vault if you don't know Fallout Equestria, and have a little adventure of what was found in there. People love the vaults in the games. People love stables. I'm going to do one of my own. And in there, they're going to find a whole society of ponies that have lived sheltered away. And their way to survive that they found was that everyone was going to be stripped of their cutie mark and have the same one. And ultimately, they were all going to be sort of not really themselves, except really the overmare over it all. She still had hers, and she was the one taking them off all the others and was secretly hiding it from. Does this sound familiar to anyone? Damn you, M.A. Larson. He got there before I did, I promise you. So maybe it was a good thing that one got cut in the end. Funnily enough, the same thing happened to me later on. I was going to do one that had a very live, die, repeat using memory magic, that they have to keep replaying the same thing over and over again to get through. And then Tom Cruise released Edge of Tomorrow, and unfortunately, he has a slightly more sway in the media zone than I do. So I can't really do much about that. It happens, honestly. Don't worry about it. You might have seen that everyone is so stupid, everyone but me thing earlier. That character is called Subject 11, who is an escaped scientific experiment who has strange, abilities with her magic that border on psychic, you might say. And that is my friend's character. He initially wrote her in and then wondered why everyone was asking him if he'd ever seen Stranger Things. He had complete accident. Stuff like that happens. So, negating the giant pun I added at the top for literature, we mentioned earlier about meeting people's expectations with what you've written in your synopsis. Well, we're going to give a little bit more on that. When people talk about an expectation, scope and tone are probably the big ones you want to go for there. If you pick up a Bethesda open world game, you're not going to expect to get something like Undertale or a Metal Gear Revengeance or anything like that for it. You're going to expect to pick up an Elder Scrolls or a Fallout. You know what you're getting with that. Same way with the tone. You're not going to pick up, say, mind blank. You're not going to pick up a My Little Pony video game and expect to suddenly find, you've actually got some horrifying, alien movie in there for it. Meeting what you're selling to people is very, very important. People are going to take that tone of what they're after. Are they after an emotionally striven piece? Are they looking for something that's going to be quite goofy? Are they going to look for something where your characters are very potent and capable and it's going to be all about showing how good they are throughout? Ensuring you stick to that throughout is harder than you might think. It's very easy to suddenly think, this works really well for the story, and start focusing on that, forgetting where you've come from and what you're offering to people, especially long, long stories. It's very common that you might recognize this if you've ever written, for stories to end up being a little bit more serious and dramatic than you maybe intended them at first, or for things to get a little bit darker than you maybe anticipated because you're trying to delve for that reaction out of your readers. Just try and resist the temptation. Ultimately, what you've told people is they're going to expect is what they're going in expecting. And if you start to vary that too much, you can play around with it, don't worry. But if you don't give them what they're after, they might think about dropping. They might feel it's not what they were after anymore. It's a tough balance, which is why I mention it. Just bear it in mind, and that will help you go most of the way. One of the other things mentioned there is not every chapter is going to be a huge, big hitter. They're not all going to swing for the fences. That's natural. That's pacing. Think about what you have between them. Mark out where your big moments in your story are. And then what's between them? Ask yourself, what are you going to do with that time? Ask yourself in advance. You can end up meandering if you just kind of go at it, waiting for the next big thing to happen. Those in-between quiet moments, there's a lot you can do with them. There's a lot of power you can use with them, except that not every chapter is going to be big, and see what you can do with that space. That's your absolute most wonderful space you can work in to do things you didn't expect. For some of the examples I have there, I was telling a very kind of emotionally striven tale of someone struggling to find their freedom in life. Well, you can still find a little bit of time for some horror in there in some of the chapters as they're in the metro area. You can find a little bit of time for a survival tale when they get stuck out in the snow. You can find a little bit of show era type stuff as they see memories of what Equestria used to be like. And you can have moments of confidence, the moments when things feel good. Sometimes we do feel more confident, and then at other times, not so. Allow that variance, but remember what your main tone is going to be all the way through. You'll hold people's attention if you keep giving them what they believe they've bought into with this. It's a particularly hard thing to do in long stories. I'm not going to sugarcoat that in the slightest. Okay, so this is looking good on time. One kind of last thing I will mention there is, as I call it, humor, hope, and darkness. Even within tough times, levity has a crucial role in all stories. Even the hardest of things. If anyone has seen, for example, Hail Mary, don't worry, I won't give any spoilers. It's a very rough situation they're in, and yet I think most will agree it's a very funny movie. Same if you see The Martian. The guy's in danger the entire time, and yet it's one of the funniest movies. In fact, it actually won a comedy award, which was a surprise to most people, including the writers. So remember that levity has a role in stories. You've got to offer that emotional juxtaposition for people. It'll hold people in. They'll remember the good times. It'll make the times when things are tough stand out all the more, feel more dramatic, because you've given that opposing view. People can see where these characters have been, what they've experienced, and how good things could be if they could just solve this. It helps give a bit of attachment. And the latter thing there is something I had to learn roughly. Readers have a hope level. If things are just getting hit again and again and again with never progressing, readers might just blank out of, some people call it a despair event horizon, which is a very dramatic way of describing people just feeling this isn't going anywhere. So remember your readers, remember how they might be feeling, and ensure to offer them something to give them hope. Things can turn out right, even in the blackest times. Honestly, The Lord of the Rings is the best example for doing that and how to do it. The movies as well managed it. In particular, if you're ever uncertain and you want a great example, just go look at the ending of Two Towers. Sam's speech that things are worth fighting for, Mr. Frodo, in there. That is a perfect example. And I think if people really think, why is that there? Why is it located there in the story? You'll find the answer very, very easily. So I think we have 27 minutes there. And we're moving into, that's a great amount of time to focus on our QA. Now, if there's not enough questions, I do have backup things we can do, but for now, we can see where we go with this and see what interest there is in that. So if anyone has any questions they want to throw out, feel free to throw your hand up. Yes? So I didn't do it, I did computer animation in university, and while I didn't become an animator from it, I am so jealous of the guy you were sitting watching before, his talent. That does naturally teach you a bit about pacing. It teaches you about tone and how to use visual elements in order to help communicate story to people. But before that, I had a wonderful English teacher when I was growing up who really pushed upon us storytelling and supported me in creativity and saying, look, you like this, keep doing it. I owe all of this to her. But to give an idea, we would normally be reading things like Lord of the Flies or Death of a Salesman. Instead, she had us reading Z for Zachariah, which is about the after effects of a nuclear war, and After the First Death, which is about a hostage taking on a bus. She had some crazy tastes. But maybe that explains something about the stories I came to. I don't know. But it certainly let me realize about different ways you could write and see what fun can be in writing. So you don't need to be professionally trained for it. I just had it through passion and a few things that related enough to it to want to try and put it together. I was inspired by other writings that I read up with, predominantly Nigel Kitching, Dan Abnett, William King. These writers really inspired me growing up. And you can make it happen for yourself. Passion will carry you into it, for sure. When you say about professional writing, nothing I've written has independently published yet, but my Murky Tale did make it to print, and it was through absolutely everything, helped get that set up as a non-profit, otherwise I don't want Hasbro sending the Pinkertons after me. So yeah, hopefully they're not Wizards of the Coast, we will see. But knowing that's out there and it has an ISBN number, I like to say that means I'm a proper writer now. I like to think that. I mean, as far as I'm aware, anything with an ISBN number goes into various book repositories in various governments around the world. So who knows, when the apocalypse eventually happens, maybe some silly green horse will survive under there somewhere. Yeah, but as a passion carries you, you don't need to be professionally trained for it. I learned it along the way. You make mistakes and you learn from them. It always happens. So look up for it. Any other questions? Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a really interesting one, actually. Particularly since Murky Number 7 is set in Philadelphia, which is in the original story. So anything I'm doing in that is going to be colliding almost at every point with what KCAT originally wrote in there. For those who are not aware, but maybe have played a Fallout game, Philadelphia in the original story was essentially based on the Pit DLC from Fallout 3. And when I went into it, I initially was really wary about it. I would try to avoid having direct characters from her story, and because the first story is set during Little Pip's escape from that. And okay, never have him quite see her other than once, but only shrouded in light, so he's just getting the impression of her. And then he hears Red Eye saying something over the radio, but he can't quite pick out what it is. I was really wary at first. By the end of the story, I was a bit more confident with it. And I started to have a few appearances from Red Eye, from various other characters you recognize from it. There was sort of a Pinky appearance at one point through the wonder of memory magic. And that's just confidence with it. Once you start to try a few things, realize, nobody's actually having an issue with this. You can start to delve in and work with it a little bit more. Knowing that KCAT doesn't really read a lot of the side stories, or at least doesn't say she reads them, very distinct difference, gave me the confidence to not worry too much about annoying anyone for it. I do know that Somber, who wrote Project Horizons, he included a little reference to my story as a little poking fun at it at one point, and it made me toss one back at him in my own story. It's a little bit of fun. People, and as silly as that was, it made me realize people don't really mind so much with it. There are some points of kind of lore collision that sometimes happen, like near the end of the story focuses on the Battle of Philadelphia, which in the main story is this huge event that happens at the end where that city is under attack from the Grand Pegasus Enclave. Well, my characters are having to run amok and try and escape within this war erupting around them. So how do I work with what KCAT had said in there, these events happening? There was a cyber dragon turned up at one point. Well, if I include that, suddenly all the attention's on that because it's a cyber dragon. Why is your attention not on the giant dragon flying around? As a result, I kind of quietly just didn't include it. So you could think maybe that's just happening over the other side of the city. Whereas conversely, how do I explain that my little band of characters aren't just getting overwhelmed by the forces that are at play? Well, in the original story, there's a... I feel bad if KCAT ever sees this. In the original story, there's a sequence where Philadelphia's response to the Grand Pegasus Enclave is to line up in a giant line outside the city and charge across the plains at them on foot, on hoof, against an enemy who's entirely airborne. It was a bit... I know what KCAT was trying for, but one way or another, I decided to write that in as, well, okay, Red Eye's not around anymore, and Stern, the griffin who's leading them, that's not a great tactic, so I guess it's canon in my story that Stern's just not good at tactics now, so that's how my one survived. You kind of sometimes have to take a little bit of a silly route to counter those lore collisions, and then at other times just confidently use them and work with them. Being respectful is the big thing. Home in the Black that you saw there, a lot of the characters in that belong to other people because it's based on a tabletop war game, a tabletop RPG that we did together. It's writing their characters in, and it took me a while to gain the confidence to write their other people's characters because I was afraid about would it be right, would the lore work, would the personality match. As it turned out, it all worked fine. People are generally excited. If you've ever seen that meme, oh my goodness, that person's cake is bigger than mine, whereas most people are just, oh my God, 2 cakes for it. Same idea. People just like to see it being included. They'll generally, even if it's a wee bit wonky, people will go, that's my thing, it's in the thing, it said the thing. They're happy to do it. So what I learned is don't worry so much, basically. Just go with the flow, see what happens. Thank you. That was actually that made me think of some memories there. Thank you for that. Right, any other questions? Ooh. Okay, all right. Well, if anyone has any questions for this, oh yes, there we go. Oh, thank you.
But where do you stand on the quantity versus quality debate?
As someone who wrote a 1.1 million word story, that is a very interesting question. I can tell you straight away, I didn't want to write it for that long. And if I wrote it today, it would be about half the length, I think. There's 2 sides to it. One is what you feel has to be expected from what you're doing, and the other is gradual skill to be able to tell more with less. I generally feel that if people want a long-running story that's going to have a lot of time and nuance and slow change, you've got to sell that to them up front. If it's something that sells itself as, oh, this is going to be solved in a few chapters, and it's all giving the impression it will be, but then 3 years later, people still seeing chapters come out, and it's just not really getting to that promise, especially if it's an early promise that would be quite simple to do, and it just doesn't go anywhere, that can become a problem. Whereas, on the other hand, there are some stories that you can set up this giant, awesome, grand-scale idea, but never really touch a lot of it because you're done. You've told your little bit of it, it's finished. There's balance to be had. When I was writing originally, Fallout Equestria stories were long. You had the original story, it's something like 600,000 to 800,000 words. Project Horizons had recently passed 1 million. Even Pink Eyes, a shorter one, still had something like 40 to 60,000 words, which was not, if anyone was ever written, that's not nothing. Heroes was out, and it was pumping out chapters at quite a rate. Long stories were just seen as what was expected from it, and so I felt I had to do that. I was a less confident writer at the time. I felt I need to match scale. And as a result, the first 2 acts of my story, I fully admit, they have some slow pacing at times. And I know the exact spots that there are because I can see where the numbers fell off on individual chapter releases. I learned from that. My next story, Home in the Black, had a much faster pacing to it and was able to tell it more the speed I wanted. Even the latter half of Murky has more content, despite the fact that the chapters are the same size, if not actually bigger at times. There's more content. There's more things happening in them for it. So size can be large, size can be small, but it needs to match the scope of what you're offering people, and things need to be happening within it. If things aren't happening, people will just feel it's stalled. Especially in fanfic, there's an impression that if any fanfic starts, chances are it's not going to end. The vast majority of fanfics fizzle out. It's a tough statistic, but it really is. It's why I always recommend people to start with little small things. Start with a 1-chapter story. Put it up, see what people think. If that works, 2 or 3 part story, maybe. If that works, maybe do something bigger from there. It'll build the people who are watching you into knowing you get stuff done. You do finish. It builds a bit of trust, and it'll give you the confidence of actually finishing things and having that motivation to go forward and do more. That kind of jumped around a bit there, but I don't really have a feeling, both long and short work, the experiences of where it is in between, it all comes down to the content within it. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
No worries, thank you. Any further questions? Yes.
What is your favorite part of actually writing a story?
I gotta say, I think my favorite part is always gotta be the latter third of any chapter. Because I notice when I first start writing a chapter or a story, the first few pages, I just do them in like a day, and I tend to stop. Because that's the hardest few pages to do, is when you have that blank page staring at you from out your screen. It's like blank canvas syndrome. It's hard to know where to get started, and you're thinking so much about those first impressions I told you about that it feels like almost a grind just to get a few paragraphs out. Once you get to the middle, you tend to hit this point of discipline where you can just start getting, okay, a few pages, and then suddenly you realize you're in the latter third now. This is going to get done, and that's an exciting feeling when you realize this is going to finish. Because every project carries risk. It might not finish. There's so many passion projects of ours that don't get there in the end, and knowing you've suddenly got one that is going to get near, that point when people read it is nearing. It's an incredibly exciting time for it. There's a saying, and funnily enough, of all people that it came from Cliffy B, or Cliff Bleszinski of Gears of War fame, and he said at one point that any project is 33% passion to get you started, and passion can carry you through that first third. After that, the next 33% is discipline. It's being able to keep yourself working at it. And see that last 33%, he says, that's just hell. That's the crawl to the end. But it's an exciting one. It's when you know you're straining for something to happen. You know that point when people's reactions are going to be incoming. One thing I can maybe give to help with getting to that there is, there's, if you heard the author Andy Weir, he did Project Hail Mary and The Martian. He at one point said, don't tell people about your story before it. Sure, if you have editors, you can bounce things off them, but it's always so tempting to say, I'm going to do this story, and then you talk about what's going to happen in it, just to say it to someone for it. You've just robbed yourself of that impetus in order to finish it. If you've given that, it degrades your will that nobody has seen this yet, and they need to see it because you need to tell this story. So be very wary of how much you talk about your story, not just because you don't want to spoil it, but just because your motivation comes from this story's in here and you want it to be out there. So then that latter third is just a wild time. I usually find it's like few pages, and then see that last third, woof, one day, every single time, because that excitement carries you through that last bit. And you can just fire it out there and resist or rather, you can start resisting the urge to throw it out there because you need to edit it for it. There's always the editing needs done. It's the worst part in some ways. But at least you can go to your pre-readers and your editors and you get some reply from them. If you're struggling with getting through that point, I will say, though, just speaking of editing, there's a wonderful saying, and for legal reasons, I must say I'm not being literal, which is write drunk, edit sober. I promise you, the fact I know an Irishman has nothing to do with this whatsoever, okay? So what it really means is just, if you need to write through, just write through and get it done. It's easier to edit than it is to write initially because you're not worrying about getting there. It's already done. From that point, you can just tweak it and edit it and work it up. If it's sitting there done, that worry about whether you'll do it, that big lump of, I need to do this, is gone. You can just chip away at it and make that perfect sphere rather than a big lump of rock around you. So I love that final section of any writing. It's always delightful. Okay, any other questions there? Okay, feel free to interrupt me with any of them there, but I do actually have other things I can actually go over. I prepare for this sort of thing now and again. So with writing in general, one of the things I've actually kind of learned from it is if you want to kind of get into it and you want to really kick it. I mentioned about starting small and writing through. Is there anyone here who has a story that they want to tell? Yeah? Is there anyone here who has a story they feel they could tell even if they aren't going to tell it yet? See, if you don't have your arm up right now, you're a liar. Because everyone has a story. It's not necessarily one that you can think of in here. It's all in here. Your own story. Relatability comes from your own personal experience. I might not be a small green horse that's had to escape slavery in my life, But I have been that lonely one who sat in the background. I have been that person who sketched away in his notepad to bring these wonderful things to life when they weren't. Something of yourself can help carry you through there. Your own life experience doesn't need to be literal. What you felt in a given place, what you experienced, that's unique to you. And when you write it through, it's going to carry. People will notice it. People will observe and say, I know that too. The lens of the unreal is a wonderful place to throw out something that's real underneath, that matters to you, close at your heart. And telling that through something that isn't you, you might be surprised how much of what you actually put out there, what you're willing to admit through the lens of another. And you can actually find some degree of, catharsis from it. I mean, you might have seen Home in the Black back there. You might have seen that little orange hippogriff a few times for it. She is a science fiction character. She is wanting to be a space pilot out there, but she fails. She messes up her exam for it and is grounded forever, planet side, because she mucked up. Her panic got the better of her. She doubted herself so much to the point that she just lost it and spun out and crashed the training shuttle. Where does she go from there? That's her dream. She wants to do that more than anything else because it didn't work out at all. And as a result, she's got an ongoing issue, self-esteem, depressive anxiety from that because of what happened to her. It's a very serious subject to touch, but I felt comfortable touching it because I've been there. I've had that. I may not have went into a spaceship, but I mentioned earlier I did animation. You want to know how many hours of animation work I've done? 0. It never worked out for me. I was one of the many who just fell onto a pile of animation students who never got anywhere with it, and it's a hard reality. If you listen to Captain Horse talk, he can tell you the horror stories that happened through that world. That emotion stayed with me for a long time. I felt like I had missed out on what I was supposed to do. And eventually I found what I actually wanted to do is write. And that carried me through to meeting people, to getting to know friends. I've now been around the world with them. I've been invited by incredible people to come to Denmark and speak to you all from here. But I failed my dream. So I had to put that into writing. And the moment I finished that, I felt finally, I've come to terms with that. Writing can be an incredibly powerful self-positive tool for yourself if you allow it to word things that you know close in your heart in a way that you don't have to necessarily just open up directly about it. It doesn't matter how intense or deep or meaningful it is. Those of you who struggle with something, those of you who have an experience you can't quite get around, writing can heal that in a wonderful way. And in doing so, the best part about it for me is you can heal other people with it who recognize it and read it. One of the most incredible things that ever happened to me was just this year in HarmonyCon, where I was doing this presentation. And HarmonyCon has a lot of people who've read my stuff there. And there was a wonderful woman in the front who had, and this matters to mention this, who had recently transitioned. And midway through, she had a QA question. And it wasn't actually a question. It was just to tell me that Murky's journey of realizing who he is, he didn't realize what true freedom was until finally he was able to do it later on. That had led her to realize the struggles that she'd gone through and now was on the other side of it and had found some comfort in reading about that. And what else could I do but just go around and give her a hug, But knowing that had actually carried forward to someone, that's the power of writing. And I didn't mean that. I didn't write that from the perspective with that experience. People can interpret it in their own way. If you go out there and you create, there's a good chance you will actually be able to reach someone, perhaps even save someone. It can happen, and you might not even hear about it. But if it's out there, and if there's even one reader on it, you might have done something important with it. Writing is powerful. Just always understand that for yourself and others. So, with that in mind, is there anyone out there who's got something they're aiming to create soon? Okay, what is it you're creating? Let's put this out to you guys here. I don't want this to just be about my stuff. I am the big person, celebrity, cameo person in con. I'm not that. I want to put it back to other people. What is it you've been creating? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Trying to bring back something that used to be done that isn't done anymore. I mean, that carries a fandom forward, man. It's like there's things I remember used to be done that aren't done now. Maybe it's one of them. Or fanfic's still a big area. It always has been. I mean, look at Star Trek. It's been doing it for decades. So there's always the space for it. Fanfic's great fun. And don't let anyone ever say that fanfic isn't as meaningful as real fiction. J. Michael Straczynski, he's the guy who put together Babylon 5. He's one of the most famous scriptwriters of all time. He used to write He-Man and the Masters of the Universe fanfic at one point before he got hired to write for Care Bears, of all things. And he said at one point, he says, you know what the difference between a fanfic artist and a professional a fanfic writer and a professional writer is? One gets paid. That's it. That's the only difference. If you were hired today to work on Gen 6, is that really any different from writing stuff now? Okay, sure, it becomes canon. You're still writing ponies. So yeah, feel proud of it and go forward and do it, man. What else is anyone creating around here? Anyone got a project they want to throw out? There you go. Oh yes, yeah, we've got a microphone.
Well, actually, I'm struggling with writing a prequel to Fallout Equestria.
Sorry, you're what, sorry?
It's a prequel to Fallout Equestria.
Oh, a prequel to it.
But I'm struggling for some time.
Yeah. How do you feel that you've got a bit more will to go and just give it a go?
May you repeat?
Yeah. Do you feel you've got a bit more will to maybe just go out and say, let's give it a go. Let's go for it. Let's do it.
Well, it's too much other things that are disturbing me.
Life life has a funny way of getting in the way of things for it. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I don't know how I manage to hold down a job and write this much at the same time. I have no idea how some people like Captain Horse manage to do the amounts they do. I don't know how some people can run a con while working a farm. But so, yeah, it can sometimes be difficult. But what I would recommend is the motivation and the speed at which you complete things is sometimes dependent on how much you've written or done beforehand. You've got your big project in mind. If you can't fit that into your schedule, maybe fit a few smaller little ones in and that will keep your skills sharp. It'll let you develop. And then when you come to that, be even better for it. And I wrote 2 stories before I started that precisely because I wanted to learn to write again. I hadn't in a few years. So maybe try a few little things. That'll get your name in there. It'll get your account set up. It'll get your creative juices flowing, as people love to say. A bit of a trope, really. But and then when you get to your big one, maybe you'll start to think, hey, let's go for it. You'll have that motivation when you get home after work. You'll have that will to use your spare time you do have to dig into it, make it work. Wish you the best of luck with it. Great stuff.
I may try.
Yep. Good luck, man. I hope next year you'll be up here telling us about it. Okay. Anyone else do any work, any passion projects out there? Any stories that they wish to tell? We have 1 minute left, so let's say if there's one person who has something that they feel important about, they want to work on in future. Oh, yes. Oh, we've got someone down here, yeah.
Yeah, I have a story that I'm actually struggling to transition into the climax.
Okay.
So my solution for now was to put it aside and work on something else. But it's just something that haunts in the back of my head that how the hell am I going to do this?
Yeah.
And make it satisfying without creating conflict with something I've already written.
Okay. How long has it been sitting waiting to happen, that bit?
At this point, I think half a year.
Okay. Chapters 15 and 16 were a year apart from me, so it can still happen. You're not too late. Okay, the momentum can still be there. If you're especially into climaxes, that transition from Act 2 to Act 3 can sometimes be one of the hardest bits to do, because suddenly the plot feels like a waterfall coming off of an edge, and it's carrying everything with it. That momentum is so high, and you're, oh my goodness, how do I cope with all this at once? What I maybe recommend doing is take a list of all your subplots, and then take a list of like what chapters remaining you have, and try and like drag and drop and get each of them so you can just plan out where each of them's going to go, and then not worry about them outside of that. Once it gets to a climax, people tend to know not everything's going to be talked about at once. They know there's so much going on, and they'll be so invested that when the next one comes up, they think, oh, yes, we're getting that subplot now. So maybe try just that sort of drag and drop of your different themes, your different subplots, and see how that lays out. And you might realize then, oh, hang on, there's actually less than I need to worry about in each one for it. I'm not going to say that's an easy solution. I've been there. It's tough. It's a really tough spot. But I tell you, see, once you start getting into the first step of that, you'll realize, oh, here we go. This is going to complete. And you'll love that feeling, I promise. I wish you the best of luck with it, man. All right. Okay. Technically, we're into the overtime, but I did see Flitter had a passion project, and I can't deny that ever coming up. Let's hear about it.
Okay, so I'm going to be fast about it, so I'm not going to give the backstory. For me, this passion project kind of stopped, not just because of dyslexia and writing in another language that is not my native language, but it was also including different cultures that I'm not well versed in, and I did try to do a lot of background checking and information and searching up sources and stuff, but I got very worried that it would be inappropriate in any way if I somehow didn't represent the different cultures, not just another one. Have any tips or advice around that?
The first thought that comes to my mind is don't be afraid to ask to people for it. I think I've had people come to me and ask me about Scottish culture for putting in. People seem to really like having a Scottish character in things now and again for it. There's something about the character of the Scottish humour maybe, or the accent. So, and I've had people come to me and ask, how is this correct? Is this not? And when I think about what I feel for it, most people I think will just be happy it's there to begin with. And if the initial assumption and ask is wrong and it has an error, they'll be excited to have it corrected rather than, offended that it was wrong in the pre-plan for it. So generally just openly coming to them and asking and saying, look, opening with, I want this to be awesome and correct. This is all I've been able to do. It might be wrong. Can you help me, do this? And the excitement will carry them more than any offense ever will for it. I know it's awkward to go to and ask for it at times. Like I'm working in other people's worlds quite a lot. Fallout Equestria, not my world. Home in the Black, not my world. Sunjackers is my next story. That's not my world. Going to people and asking and just saying, look, I want this to be right. Can you give me some pointers here? Generally, the excitement comes out of it rather than the worry for it. And then suddenly you have an advisor on board. They'll be eager for it. But I wish you best of luck with it. And I know you'll get there because we've all seen this weekend what your passion projects create. This is after all, Flitter's passion project that we're all here for, is it not? And the many other staff, I will say. And while I'm saying that, I see we've come to the end of our time here. So I will just say thank you to you all coming. To those of you who read not just my story, but to other stories and keep this fandom's storytelling alive of any mediums and any form of type. It's an incredible fandom for creativity, more than many others I've seen. Any con I go to, I come out feeling like I want to create. I want to do more. Take one walk around the vendor hall and tell me this fandom isn't one of the most artistic out there for it. There's some that have art, there's some that have music. Is there any of them that have that and regular cons to show it off? This is a special place. So make use of that energy and go forward with it. So thank you to you all. Thank you to NorseHorse for hosting me through this and conscripting me into being able to do some wonderful things here. It's been a great time being in Denmark. I hope you enjoyed what I can bring. And if even one of you goes out there and writes something off of this, I hope I've given you some some ability to do it. Now, if anyone has any further questions for me, I will be lingering around for a few minutes probably. Feel free to come right up to me. Just ask me. Very approachable. If you didn't feel comfortable asking on a microphone, I will give you my time. I'm more than willing to do that. And as an addition to that, if you all want to participate in a little bit of storytelling, after this, I will be heading down to the Games Hall. There is a wonderful game by Captain Horse called Night Haze. It's a tabletop cyberpunk game. I will be aiming to run a demo game of it down there where you can try to be some of the cyberpunk ponies trying to do a daring heist within a nightclub. So if you want to tell a story with me, feel free to come down. It should take us a couple of hours to run through it. You don't need any experience of tabletop to do this. We're just playing it fast and loose. So I'll be here for questions. After that, I'll be down there. If you're interested in playing a demo game with